Defund the police. When you hear that, it incites. It's provocative. It
Gets the people going.
Gets the people going.
My brain's a problem.
It's
You know-
also about developing alternative emergency response systems that can provide rapid response support in safety interventions that don't rely on someone with a gun and a badge and handcuffs and the authority to kill with immunity.
Put it this
We can
way,
go down the list.
there's nuance in this conversation when it comes to defund the police. There's nuance into that. When you throw that phrase around, it removes all nuance. So I'm with certain people when they understood that we have to do something about police reform, but the defunding the police, there's a lot of people who work as police officers, have family as police officers. All that says is that we're going to get paid less. That screams that we're going to be underfunded from what we already have. Some places are already understaffed, and it doesn't speak to what the messaging is. All right, welcome to Everything Is Podcast. Pull up
Sir.
because yes sir. Pull up because tonight is the receipts room, and tonight we're going to talk about 3 words. Well, I mean, 2, not 6, 3 words that have been more effectively has been used more effectively as a political weapon than almost any phrase in recent American history. Those 3 words are defund the police. Not because we're going to tell you what to think about it, because we're going to tell you what it actually, we're just going to tell you what it actually means. Well, where it actually came from, what actually happened in the places that tried different approaches to policing, and why the phrase that most DSA candidates have never used is being asked of every single one of them in every single media appearance in 2026 cycle.
So, the homie we talked about him, Abdul El-Sayed, or as our commander in chief say, Abdul El-Sayed. All right, my man out there is running for Senate in Michigan, and he's been asked about defunding the police. Francesca Hong, she's out there running for governor in Wisconsin, and she's been asked about defunding the police. JoAnna Mendoza, running for Congress in Arizona, a 2020 quote that was used that she had used about reallocating funds to social services is being used to brand her as anti-police in 2026 right now as well. Not one of those candidates that we speak of has called for abolishing the police, right? Because that is what we're speaking about, the differentiation between defunding and abolishing. When people hear one word and think of another word, that's not on the person that spoke the word that they said. Okay, defunding is not abolishing, and that is not one of those candidates has called for. What they get asked about is not even their platform of what they speak about when they say defund the police. This phrase that was coined in 2020 has been misrepresented within the first 2 weeks. It was a baby slapped on the butt, started being misinterpreted. That's how it happened. And it has been used as a disqualifying smear against any progressive candidate ever since. And before we talk about whether defunding the police is a good idea or not, we have to talk about what it actually means, right? Because the version most people are afraid of is not the version that is ever actually laid on the table.
Yes, man, this is Everything Is. This is the receipt room. The receipt room edition is every single Wednesday night. And also, we are here Monday through Friday, 9:30 Eastern on YouTube and Twitch. I know we're a little bit late tonight because we're doing some research. And make sure that we are actually on par with our due diligence when it comes to the receipt room. But we do want y'all to subscribe. You know, we want y'all to follow. We want y'all to like, because we have a lot planned for you tonight. If y'all are interested in decoding and declassifying defund the police. So drop a like.
Listen, we are here talking about things that matter every single day. And with this edition here, we don't bring our opinions, we bring straight facts. So what y'all need to do is strap in because we are the zeitgeist.
We are the culture. And stick around because tonight we are going from 1907, I mean, sorry, excuse me, 1704 to 2026. From the first slave patrol in the Carolinas to Zoran Mamdani's crime numbers in New York City today. We have the receipts on what American policing was built to do, what defunding actually means versus how it was actually reported, what happened in every city that tried something different, and what Brandon Scott is doing in Baltimore right now that is working better than anything any of his predecessors tried. The data is in. Tonight we read it.
Listen, pull up. We're about to get into it.
All right, I want to ask you about some scrutiny you've gotten for past social media posts that you deleted, including about defunding the police. Now, you've said recently you never called for defunding the police, but our K-File team here in CNN found interviews in the past where you did repeatedly back in 2020, including in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing. I want you to listen to your comments here.
I believe that we do need to defund the police insofar as defunding the police is disinvesting in the means of incarcerating someone or killing them on the streets. What if we were to invest in social services? What if we were to invest in public schools? What if we were to invest in public libraries? What would the world look like there? And I think that has to be the way we go. And that means both investing more in these services, and it also means investing less in police.
So why did you say you never called for defunding the police when it sounded like you did in the past?
You know, what's interesting about that comment is I go in as far as defining what I mean by that. Do you disagree with investing in libraries and public services and social services? You fixate on the word defund, but what I'm talking about is war material that we made too much of during the war in Iraq. And then because we had too much of it, we had to find somewhere to sell it. So we sold it to a whole bunch of local police departments. I believe in investing in retention and retirement for law enforcement. I've done work with law enforcement during my time in Wayne County.
But won't that issue of defunding the police, won't that become an electability issue in November?
Let me finish my answer, Manu. I actually don't think it is. I think the vast majority of people agree that they want to get home safely every night. I think the vast majority of law enforcement agree that they want to get home safely every night. I think the way that we have thought about law enforcement is we answer every social problem with somebody with a gun. And you talk to folks in law enforcement with whom I've worked very closely, they'll tell you they don't want to go on those runs where they know that somebody's in mental crisis. So maybe instead of investing in war material for PDs, we invest in a safe retirement for them. And then instead of sending a guy with a gun, we actually send a trained mental health professional. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I defined. And I think that's exactly what people want. Now, if you want to keep talking about one particular word that was in vogue that I tried to define at the time, sure. But I think if we're having a serious conversation about public safety, you'll see that my perspective is in keeping with exactly what most people who are rational about this question are talking about and what they want. I want law enforcement to be able to get home safely, and I want people to be safe in their communities. And the way we do that is to make sure that we have competent law enforcement and to make sure that we are not making war on our streets and that we have the social services that people need to stay healthy and safe.
All right. Welcome to the receipt room. Tonight, as you just saw right there, we talk defunding the police. I think if you were here with us for the past 4 minutes, I think you might be like, all right, there you go, the show's over now, because he pretty much explained what it is. But there's more that goes into it. We're gonna decode all of it. We're gonna talk about the history of the police in this country. We're gonna talk about more of how it's kind of been co-opted and presented in the media as of late, and you know how it was changed within 2 weeks to mean something completely different. But before we get into that, Chris, how you feeling tonight?
You know, we've had better days. You know what I'm saying? But I think realistically today is a conversation that needs to be had with the nuance and the gravitas necessary, right? I think a lot of the shenanigans kind of will be out of the way as we speak about something that is so prevalent in the culture today, right? Again, the zeitgeist, right? Again, these are our words, right? Defund the police might be the most misunderstood 3 words of the last decade, right? Defund the police. When you hear that, it incites it's provocative. It
Gets the people going.
Gets the people going, bro. You know, and some people heard it and thought, no more police ever, which that is abolish police, right?
Yeah.
And then we have some people who heard it and they said, hey, let's redirect some of the budget, and that's called reallocating the police, right?
Exactly.
So we have two different vocal points from a word that means neither of the two. Defund does not mean reallocate. It can, that's a synonym, possibly, but that's not what it is. And defund does not mean abolish. I mean, it could. It's a synonym, but
I don't think defund is even a synonym. I think defund speaks to directly the funds, defund, you know, and it's not necessarily just completely means divesting completely, where they got to figure it out on their own. No, listen, it's, you know, let's look into how much they're being funded. Let's look into the militarization. That's where I took it, of how the military is being presented on these streets, and our approach to policing. If people are being killed in the street who are unarmed, or sometimes even completely innocent, or police are going into somebody's house and shooting them in the middle of the night, like rest in peace Breonna Taylor, then yeah, we might need to look into this a little further on how we approach, you know, making sure everybody's safe in the community. But yeah, man, we're gonna get more and more into that tonight. Listen, if you're here with us, please drop a like, hit the comment section. We're here on the chats. We're paying attention. My chat's working tonight, so I can see what's going on in the chats. Yeah, man, let's get right into it. Let's talk about it. Let's
have a real again sociological argument to present, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Like, a lot of people don't really understand the dynamics, the economical advancement that comes with the funding going towards one place than another, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to think about it. As much money as the police receive, right? As much resources as the police receive, as much as hand-me-downs from the military that state agencies receive. We're talking about counties, state troopers, municipalities. They're receiving military-grade equipment to then exert themselves to the citizens, right? You know, and there is no trust there. There is no cohesion. You know what I'm saying? To how we commute, to how we our community to one another. There's a legit fear on both sides, and you know, one sees us as a threat, and the other one sees the other as a threat, and that's not what the police should be. So I'm glad that, you know, as we speak about whether it's feasible to restrict police funding while maintaining public safety, it goes along with the conversation that we were having about the fire department, socialism. All of these things are synonyms, right, with one another. They're cousins. First cousin, second cousin, third, but they are all related to the hierarchy of where does
I would
your
have to push back on that a
go
little
to?
bit. I hear where you're coming from, but
Okay,
I
that's
feel
great.
like I want to push back on a little, because words have meanings, and I think they all get lumped up together as this big socialist umbrella, which it's not really. You know, I think that when defund the police came about during the George Floyd riots, and I'll be me and you talked about it last week. I was against that. Was a jump in the shark moment for me with the BLM movement. To me, you know, and I feel like this took away from the real conversation. That was making it about the money, which is important, rather than the reforming of the police. I want reformation with the police, you know, and I think that completely came out. And when you talk about money,
instead of you saying defund the police, is reform the police.
Yeah,
Reform,
I mean, put programs in
okay.
place so that, one, they don't have to hit every single damn block with every single freaking call and be stretched thin, and then put more money behind it to get more and more cops in, and pay their pensions, because we're like, oh man, we have to keep putting more money into a problem that's not being solved. No, we got to find better solutions for how these police operate in different circumstances. There should be a protocol for this situation versus that situation. If there's an active shooter, it's one thing. If there's a guy who's been looking suspicious, another. Is being so like that's where I'm talking about. And then the whole conversation switches to defund, which obviously will get smeared and decoded as abolish completely, get rid of the police. Oh my God, because you killed somebody, you want to have no police anymore? Oh my God, these radical leftists, they're crazy. And I was like, fuck, they did it. They did it to us again. Once we get any momentum, they smear it as some radical thing, and it gets spread as this crazy thing that's extreme, that we don't even intend it to mean, and that's why that's why it's rearing its head again in 2026 in this election cycle, because there's a resurgence of the DSA and socialist movement, and they tend to lean a lot more liberal. And during that protest against BLM is seen as a liberal movement, they are super staunch and like, let's smear them too with the same thing of like, yeah, they want to get rid of all police, when in none of their platforms, whether it be Abdul El-Sayed, whether it be Francesca Hong, whether it be JoAnna Mendoza, they have not put that in their platform of defunding the police. Even Mamdani got smeared with that when he was running, and he said, no, I'm not going to defund the police, but he said, no, I'm not going to increase the budget either. He said, we're going to find a way to have comprehensive mental health resources for the police so that they don't have to reach out, go out for every single mental health issue crisis out there in the city, and we're going to get more into his approach to things later on. But I think they all get lumped in, and I think that we have to dissect these things, and that's why we're doing it tonight, is because we want to make a clear delineation. Because you might not be for socialism, but you might hear what we have to say tonight and say, oh, this makes sense. Defund the police is not as scary as I thought initially. And that's my goal here tonight, is that if you take the time to listen to what we have to say, you get a clear point, and maybe you don't agree with it still, but you get a clear definition of what it actually means. So when you go out and you talk about it, it's not just you think of getting rid of police.
And to Chidi's point, before we really roll it, and not just it's a late receipt that I just came across. It's from if you want to, I'll send it to you just so you can have it and to let you know.
Yeah, in the Discord for sure. I'll grab it.
What I am looking at right here is I stay in Florida, and there's a Florida Political Chronicle that was published, volume 29 in 2022, and I am on page 135 in there, and in this particular chronicle, I'm on the second paragraph on page 135, and it says, the research previously mentioned in this paper shows that race plays a role in public attitudes regarding rehabilitative versus punitive responses to crime. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, JSO, in Jacksonville, Florida, despite not being the target of national headlines in recent years for police brutality or excess use of force, has been the subject of both local news and lawsuits filed by private citizens for alleged incidents related to these behaviors, and made national news in 2017 for alleged racial profiling using pedestrian violations. And it cites the case. And while the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in its 2020 community survey conducted by the University of North Florida Public Opinion Research Lab found that 70% of overall respondents approved of the way JSO is handling its job. The lowest approval ratings came from Black respondents to the survey at 59%. So again, there is a disparity in how communities receive help, view help, receive policing, view policing, right? I'm pretty sure if we're looking at the number, like, 70% of Jacksonville said that they're doing their job correctly. Well, I don't think that's a high enough number for one. If you think that's the barometer for a higher number, fine. 70% is not high. If there's 1,000 people, then 700 people have said yeah, but that means 300 people are subjected to
Yeah.
police brutality, racial profiling. That number's still too high. And
Way too high.
a lot of people will say, well, 300 people out of 1,000, that's not a lot. Again, if we use bareback numbers and say 30% of your community is being racially profiled and have an adverse feeling towards police, then I believe the reforming of police and how police do things needs to be viewed. And again, disproportionately, we're not going to make this a black and white thing, but we are going to speak about how this became into a prominent national speaking talking point. Is that 2020, there's a lot of police brutality, and it wasn't against white folk. Okay. It wasn't just like the hangings that are happening right now in the South down here between Mississippi and Georgia and Florida and Louisiana or wherever else they got it going on. They gonna say suicide. I'm gonna tell you, hey, black people not a monolith, but I'm gonna tell you right now, nigga, black people are not hanging themselves. I can tell you wholeheartedly that is not a black person way to get up out of here. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we need to pay attention to these statistics. And a lot of people will say, and I don't want to misquote myself or get on a tangent, but people may say 24 people is not a lot. Right? If we're talking about 24 people that have been found right now in the situation I'm just speaking about. 24 people is a lot when there's no investigation being done and police get into the scene and it was like, suicide, don't know what else to do. We're going to write this paperwork up and that's it. That is something, that's not police work. So when we're talking about reallocating funds or we're talking about defunding or we're talking about reforming, that type of police work is also included in that. Do the damn due diligence of doing the job correctly. And that is a problem that we find in the community that lets us be a little less trustworthy when we're speaking about it. Like, yeah, tear the whole thing down. But that's not how we get it done. And Chidi would be a vocal point to that.
Absolutely, man. And it starts with knowing where you came from and to know where you're going, you know? So right now we have all these DSA members being bombarded with these questions because I think this calls into question the structure that we're in, the structure that it is. And I think when we get too close to the nerve of the history of this country, there is a knee-jerk reaction to push back from, especially the conservatives. I mean, it caused the conservative civil war to push back on, civil rights and slavery justices, So now they're like the same people that we, put in charge to catch the slaves and then turn into the police. You guys got to push back on that. And I think there's still that residue of we have to tame the black community. We got to tame the other community, whether it be immigrants or whatever it may be, rather than see them as human beings and treat them as such. But let me talk about George Floyd. And I'm sorry, guys, but there's an article here I really, really want, but I might have to get a New York Times subscription for these episodes because there's some really good shit on there. But yeah, man, we gotta go back to George Floyd, man. This is a man who was killed in broad daylight in Minneapolis and with a knee on his neck for how long was it? I don't want to misspeak. It was like 8 minutes, bro. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
On camera. On camera. So we have to look into the outrage and why this spurred up this movement. Because I think that people already were in a space of like, man, we're getting shot in the streets. We're getting killed unarmed. Since Trayvon, I know that it radicalized me and shit. And it said radicalized. Man, wow, kid shouldn't be shot. That's radical now. But for when he went to go get an Arizona and Skittles, and then people started making jokes about it, and making memes about him being killed, and then we want to wonder why this country is the way it is. It's a lot of racist fucking people here that will use hate to justify anything. But in Minneapolis, the first days of George Floyd killing exist in memory as kind of a blur. Even so, the burning of the 3rd Precinct Police Station on May 28th was a signal event, and not one for residents of the South Side, where Floyd was killed, and so many buildings, and not only for residents of the South Side, where Floyd was killed, and so many buildings that went up in flames. 5 miles north, residents of the city's other substantial black area worried about the chaos that was coming their way. That night, Felipe Cunningham, a city council member representing part of North Minneapolis, drove around for 2.5 hours without seeing any cops at all. They were hunkered in their stations. In the void they left, a community stepped up. On Emerson Avenue, gang members took pride of their place in the phalanx guarding the Solo grocery outlet, one of the North Side's only 2 supermarkets. They say we locked it down for 7 nights, says Reverend Jerry McAfee, a Baptist preacher who works with the gangs. Members of the patrol were identifiable by green and white bandanas and weapons not necessarily displayed. Here's what I could tell you, McAfee says. Fort Knox wasn't guarded any better. An integrated neighborhood a mile and a half away, unarmed residents in orange tees formed a perimeter around another supermarket. Night after night, they challenged the white youth circling the block in pickup trucks without license plates, vetted unknown volunteers, and it dawned on more than one of them, edged toward an approach to public safety that might supplant the deeply flawed one that provoked the mayhem around them. What could replace the police? The question, until recently confined to activist circles, has been forced into a national debate by a brutal logic. If the killing of Floyd truly left Americans with resolve to address systemic racism in the country, shouldn't the starting point be the system that produced this excruciating death? Almost 2 weeks after, now former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, 2 weeks after now former police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck, the Minneapolis City Council concluded that its police department was beyond reform. The Minneapolis City Council concluded that the police department was beyond reform, and it must instead be replaced. In a unanimous vote, the council embarked on a year-long quest to produce a new model for cultivating safety in our city, explicitly steered by the desires of the people, most oppressed by the current one. If Minneapolis produces a new safety paradigm, the implications will be profound, reaching beyond the horror of police killings toward a rethinking of criminal justice lamented by liberals and conservatives alike. If it fails, a status quo deeply rooted in the control of black bodies will remain the norm. And this will have been a nice little moment in history where we almost did something, says Jeremiah Ellison, a council member from Minneapolis' North Side. So before I continue with this, obviously George Floyd was a watermark moment that people saw hope in. People really saw some hope in to make some real change and police reformation. I was on board wholeheartedly with that. I was living in Orlando, down in Florida with you, and my ex at the time. Me and my ex went down to downtown Orlando. We were in the protests around that time, just showing our solidarity with the movement, with the moment. I wanted to protect her. I didn't want to get arrested, so we ended up dispersing once the cops started threatening us with pepper bullets and all that stuff. But some people obviously stuck around, and they got apprehended for their peaceful protest. I know that during that time, these peaceful protests were happening not just in America; they were happening all over the globe. And I think this was an enlightening moment where we had an opportunity to really garner some change for how we police our communities and have a real in-depth conversation about this. So clearly here, the Minneapolis City Council concluded that its police department was beyond reform. Now, if I click here, they say it was a tinderbox. How George Floyd's killing highlighted America's police reforms. There's a whole nother article here you can find on times.com explaining why their police department was beyond reform. So think about it. If the Minneapolis Council, after this tragedy, themselves said it was beyond reform, imagine how many precincts work the same way. And imagine what that says to the public. It says that there's change that could be happening, but I believe that it kind of got subverted. But let me show you a video on this article because I don't want to read the whole thing, guys. But if you go to time.com, Police Reform America, you can read the entire article there. All right, but let me show you the video attached to it before we move forward.
Members revealed their plan to defund and dismantle the police department.
The announcement is a direct response to protesters demanding change in the wake of George Floyd's death.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Ellison.
Aye.
Vice President Jenkins.
Aye.
President Bender.
Aye.
There are 12 ayes.
We're talking about a paradigm shift in the way that cities and states, the way our society understands the needs of communities. That is long-term work.
I want to be looking at civilization and our own traditions before police. I think it's one of those moments where we need to be returning to our own cultural roots, returning to our own cultural traditions, and like really thinking about like what did they do to keep each other safe, and how can we apply that to the world that we live in now.
Our folks are not actually given the tools and space to be able to imagine a world without police. And my fear is that we're going to pick up crumbs when we need to ask for more. I kind of think about like the restructuring period of right after the abolishment of slavery. I'm not going to say it was the best times, but it was a time that then moved us forward and progressed us into a future that a lot of people couldn't see 10 years before.
This is about identifying specific interventions and implementing them to address a broad range of problems.
It's also about developing alternative emergency response systems that can provide rapid response support in safety interventions that don't rely on someone with a gun and a badge and handcuffs and the authority to kill with immunity. We can go down the list. There can be violence interruption and prevention where people in the communities respond with crisis-informed approaches, where there's tools and resources to respond to whatever the situation is. But if you're having a mental health crisis, if someone shows up with a gun, that might escalate the situation, especially if you have any kind of experience with police violence.
You can look at any major American city and then immediately go to the first-ring suburbs and look at the most affluent suburbs and look at the amazing infrastructure that they have. So just like even like the little cities within our greater city as a whole, like there are still neighborhoods that have absolutely no police interaction because there aren't the type of crimes that are survival crimes that keep getting reported and unjustly criminalized against Black and brown bodies. So when we're taking the money away from the police and actually investing it into our infrastructure, you are going to see a crime rate drop.
There's going to be an assessment period where we figure out what is it that we need in this moment. What are some departments that are underfunded, right? Housing department, right? How are we actually housing people so that that is not something that they're policed on?
The social services are going to take some time, right? It's not enough just to say, I've got psychological services available, and now we're not going to have any money in law enforcement. So what we may end up needing to do before we defund is invest in Black communities. Ultimately, I'm fairly convinced that that can be both cost saving and more aligned with the values that we have as a nation.
I'm gonna stop right there real quick because this kind of speaks to what me and you've been talking about when it comes to how the suburbs are created versus how the city and the hood is created. I believe that some underfunded communities are perpetually underfunded because of excuses they make on whether, like we talked about the education stuff, where it's like, oh well, this many kids didn't have this many grades, so we don't have to we justify not giving them as much money, when money can really solve a lot of these problems, whether it is in infrastructure or education or whatever. So it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you have underfunded communities that are now making, like she said, the one young lady said over there, having to deal with survival crimes and then getting over policed because of those survival crimes. And I think it starts there. Like you said, just investing in. I always talk about lowering, raising the floor rather than keep on putting money to the top. We have a guy that has $1 trillion in assets due to this country and a lot of the business he does here. We have people who have hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in this country. At some point, we could try to make an active effort to say, all right, there's people on Skid Row. How do we help these people and get them off the streets? All right, there's people out there in homeless in New York City in Times Square. There's homeless everywhere. And then, okay, how do we lower the crime rate? How do we address the absorbent rent so that people are not getting evicted? These things do impact the community so that they have to fight for survival rather than thrive. And I think that when we start to invest in these communities, we can see a decrease in crime. We can see a decrease in all these types of behaviors that cause these situations where we sit here and say, wow, we need more police.
Well, I just sent something to you in the Discord. The last thing I sent you, the Defund the Police cause crime surges, and based on this opencrime.us website, the analysis shows, to your point, not as a counter argument, but there is nuance in this conversation, right?
Okay, that's good.
Where when the funds are again not so much cut, but reallocated, we can show and see a real data point moving in a positive direction. What actually happens in police budgets we have right now, it's a pattern that shows that initial cuts, often modest as the beginning, and then they're followed by rapid reversals as crime rose and public sentiment shifted, right? By 2023, most major cities were spending more on police than they did in 2020. So, and those at the beginning of the top of the at the beginning of the top of the page, it says what actually happened to police budgets. And this is just a few cities here, but you can kind of see where it would start off with Austin, Texas, where they cut 150 million, roughly 1/3 of the Austin Police Department in 2020. They reversed most of those cuts in 2022. Now, I don't know what crime did to make them, but I do know that, again, when they talk about public sentiment, we have public sentiment, and we also had an administration that was rapidly being adverse, right? They weren't necessarily helping in case. By 2022, we had America's looking at Joe Biden when we thought he saved us, and he was talking about we're going to give money to Russia and Ukraine, and the country was like, all right. So anything that was known as progressive during that time was a rapid reverse within those once the Republicans got back the House and the Senate during that administration period. But you can see right here, New York City, they shifted 1 billion from New York Police Department. They didn't actually have a service reduction. They just shifted and reallocated. And most of those accounting changes, it says right here, it moved to school safety and to the education department. Now, I do also want to speak to you about this, and I want to know if we'll be able to pull some research up on the fly, because I didn't actually just pre-show. I want to know what decriminalization of marijuana did to the crime surge in New York City, because I do know that again, stop and frisk was very much
Yeah.
prevalent, and stop and frisk was mainly catching people who had a little bit of bud on them, who were selling dope or selling drugs, whoever the case may be. More oftentimes than that, like it was weed busts, it was weed drugs. You couldn't smoke out in public like they do now. I want to know what the decriminalization of marijuana plus the shifting of resources. I want to know how that actually is look, because again, as Mondani is behind this is only supported also by a governor and by the state when those funds are allocated once it comes with the new fiscal, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to know how that is equating, because we see in Texas they said, hey, forget all that hip law that we said we was going to do. We need niggas in the prison.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I'm
Yo,
saying?
it's
So,
crazy. So I want to go through this in a second because
Okay.
so it looks like some places did cut, but then they restored it. So
yes,
and it seems
yes,
like some
Portland
places cut
Portland
and
did
they
it, and they
cut
saw
15
crime
million
increase.
and they saw crime increase. All right, so we want to keep it equal on what it actually has done when they have defunded police. Some places I do think that it could work, and some places might not need it. I want to be clear. I do think that, and also it matters of where you put the money towards.
Yeah,
If it just goes
Portland,
to,
you can't have drugs legalized and then you cut police presence. I don't think that, because
but think about this: 15 million is not a lot. That's not that much, compared to the,
it's not.
But we'll look into this in a moment because this is a great resource. Listen, but I want to just like talk to you because this is part of the problem I had, and I want to get into like just a little section that I had about how I think about defunding police. The phrase hurt the Black Lives Matter movement because that's what they were afraid of. It's just that there's no more police on the street and crime increasing, So we talked about it last week, and that's why we're doing this show this week, is because Angie Nixon, she had a really, really good response to when they asked her about if she in favor of defunding the police, and she said she was in favor of comprehensive police. Man, I don't want to get it wrong. Let me look it up because she said it so brilliantly. Do you write it down?
I no, I did. Was it? No, it was comprehensive. Fuck. I mean, fudge. Sorry, Auntie.
I think it's comprehensive criminal justice reform or something like that.
Comprehensive criminal justice reform, I think it was. I thought it was comprehensive. If I'm not, or
You don't support defunding the.
No, I don't support defunding the.
Oh shit! Let me just get that video for you guys. 1 second. Can now let me click the fucking page? Are you bullshit here? Shit, hold up.
You don't support defunding the police?
No, I don't support defunding the police. I do support comprehensive criminal justice reform to make sure we are addressing some of the root causes
comprehensive
of
criminal justice reform
leading into a life of crime.
Your Republican opponent, Ashley Moody, already is saying the positions of the DSA and particularly of you are crazy, calling you all comrades together, et cetera. So what about abolishing prisons, which is one of the platform positions of the national DSA? Do you support that?
I don't support abolishing prisons. What I do support is abolishing for-profit prisons because they exploit labor and they usher many of our children into the school to prison pipeline. Why are we incentivizing the enhancement of penalties and actually allow the enhancement of not actually allowing the education system to be successful?
All right. So there you have it. Like this, and this is why I think I would have put was how I would have put things. Criminal justice reform, police reform. The summer of 2020, it had its largest protest movement in American history, and an estimated of 26 million people participated across the country. The documented evidence of police violence was undeniable back then. So let's be real, like it was a moment, and this is when people say that BLM didn't work, but it had an opportunity to really shake some shit until this defund the police narrative started to really put make everybody scared. The political moment was unprecedented, and the phrase that media reduced to 3 words in 48 hours became the story instead of the deaths that started the protests. And that's what I was afraid of. I knew once they started saying defund the police that would become the story in the country, and we're still talking about it today. We're still talking about it today. So, in my opinion, the phrase I think the phrase partly killed the movement. I'm gonna be real. The phrase became the thing that opponents could point to when they needed to change the subject, and it worked. BLM protests did not lead to police defunding. In cities with large Republican voter shares, protest is associated with significant increase in police budgets. So it seems like when we protest, they increase the police budget essentially. The protests happened. The phrase got amplified. Police budgets went up in Republican cities, especially, and as a direct political backlash. And that is the receipt on what the phrase cost the movement. It definitely did. The phrase cost the movement 100% because it kind of did the reverse. Kind of it. Put it this way: there's nuance in this conversation when it comes to defund the police. There's nuance into that. When you throw that phrase around, it removes all nuance. So I'm with certain people when they understood that we have to do something about police reform, but the defunding the police, there's a lot of people who work as police officers, have family as police officers. All that says is that we're going to get paid less. That screams that we're going to be underfunded from what we already have. Some places are already understaffed, and it doesn't speak to what the messaging is, which is really to reform and to reallocate funds so that places have the appropriate, criminal justice methods, and policing methods. Let me see if I can see where. 1 second. Let me see. Let's go back to the article you were sharing
So
with us.
I have to double check and see if I'm reading this correctly. But as I'm pulling up, and I asked, and comprehensive criminal justice reform is something that again is very much something else that's feasible, but there's a thing that what does comprehensive actually look like? Like, you know what I'm saying? What counts as comprehensive? You know what I mean? Like, we have 50 states, we have thousands of counties, we got one federal system, all moving independently in different directions at times, right? So I do feel like that the data shows and it reflects that reform works, but
Yeah.
the backlash says that data doesn't matter as much as the headline. Like that's the true data, and I have to look up something to verify this, but I'm looking at right now there why the framing of comprehensive matters. Bipartisan is necessary with this, right? And I have to look up the First Step Act of 2018 because that said it was signed by Trump and is probably the clearest example of genuinely bipartisan comprehensive reform bill, reducing some federal mandatory minimums and expanding early release programs. So, as much as we shit on Trump, as much as he deserves, I actually have to go look at this act. I actually have to go look at this bill, and I would then have to compare it to see how comprehensive it actually is and to see if it is feasible. Because if that is something that we can use across the aisle and say, hey, bruh, guys, you've already worked with us in bipartisanship with a bill like this. Let's expand that so we can kind of, because again, conservative and libertarians, they groups like Right on Crime, like those are the people that we have to talk to, because cost cutting, reducing government overreach, the second chance redemption argument, those are all the things that they can still support while also having strong enforcement for violent crimes. You see what I'm saying? So we have to figure out how to get across the aisle with that.
Yeah, I think even Obama, he had his statements on it, and he said that defund the police was a bad slogan that alienated people who would otherwise support reform. He made a distinction between the policy ideas and the phrase explicitly. The person Republicans spent 8 years calling a socialist, so the phrase was too far, then that tells you something about the gap between what was being asked for and how it was received. That's some of the problems when it comes to the left, because we have to do even double the packaging of what our policies are so that it does not scare majority of people. Because if just the other day we had police come to around my block because we had some people that were suspicious around us. We want police too. Like, we understand that necessary for somebody that is an authority above the public to say, hey, let's take this individual who is a threat out of here. And to some type of authority. A lot of people like to say black people don't like authority. No, we don't like over policing. We don't like unnecessary police. We don't like to be also violent and being criminalized, and we don't like to be put in a position where we are fighting for our lives against police. And these are the problems that are facing many communities across the United States. So, what are you gonna say?
Okay, this is not meant for it to be an argument. This is just meant to be a twofold portion of the conversation, where we do have to, at some point in time, there has to be some type of recognition of both sides, right? When we talk about the over policing, which is very much, evolved and lumped
We
in.
got a
When we
comment,
talk
by the way, but
about
finish what you're saying. But we got a comment that I want to address. Disgrace, give me 1 second. We'll be right there with you. But continue.
when we're including drug policy, when we're including incarceration in prisons, when we're including pretrial bail, when we're including disproportionately reaffirming some of the stereotypes, ourselves within these communities have to do a better job of perpetuating what this is, who we are, rather than be complicit in the natures of the things that surround us that then reinforce them to be in the neighborhood. If you get my drift, you see what I'm saying? Like, there can be a lot more distinction in how we operate within our own community that can kind of, it can kind of relinquish some of the necessity of them being in our neighborhoods.
Okay.
If we ain't just
well, let's get to that, because there's a broader conversation that I want to have on that, because you're right, but there is a inherent nature of policing that almost is like Batman. Does he cause the villains, or is he, does he cause his own villains to be created, or is he actually fighting crime and making Gotham less more safe? because it seems like he's just creating more problems sometimes, But that's like a fictitious example. But disgrace. Listen, you said, what's your reasoning into defunding the police, and what exactly do you mean by it? What we're doing here tonight is we're doing the receipt room on what defund the police is, because it seems to be a phrase that a lot of people are misinterpreting. It seems to be a lot of that I think was co-opted by right-wing media to disarm or to demonize essentially the ability to reform policing and
But to your point, I think is also not to cut you off. To your point, it is bad phrasing. It
Oh,
is bad
100%.
framing,
It's exactly,
right?
and that's my
It-
part. I agree with Obama. This is not good marketing for what it actually is. Let me go back and explain what it is, because I think
well,
you might have missed it. Once,
can
real
we
quick.
get him to disgrace? Let us. That's a question we want to ask to you, if you don't mind. Can you give us what you think about the idea? Can you let us know what you interpret it to be, and do you have any kind of uh, uh, um, reservations about defunding the police? We would love the community to engage with that. So let
Absolutely,
us know if you
absolutely.
want to
And
do
let
that,
me
please.
explain to you. So the movement for Black Lives popularized the work of abolitionists and galvanized social attention around the demand to defund the police and invest in education, affordable housing, healthcare, and community solutions to preventing and addressing harm. So the spectrum the phrase covered was, on one end, the abolitionists. They want a full elimination of policing as an institution and replacement with community-based safety systems. This is a small minority of people who use the phrase, but this version is the opposite. But this is the version of the opposition spent all its time discussing. So this is a small community that the opposition discusses that truly want to replace police with a community-based safety system. Then you have the middle ground where people are talking about reallocation, which is basically move a portion of police budgets toward mental health response, social workers, housing programs, youth services, and community violence intervention. This is what most people who use the phrase meant. This is what they really meant. This is what the Oxford study examined. This is what JoAnna Mendoza described in Arizona in 2020 and is being called extreme now in 2026. Then on the other end, you had reform, which is, I think, close to what I was going for, because I think it's more realistic that we can get reform, which is better training, independent oversight. That's not part of the police departments. Please, for the love of God, can we get independent oversight committee that, I don't know, maybe is FBI trained or whatever, that legitimately stays within the community to oversight every single case with these police officers, and that's not buddy with them. I think that would be incredible. Body cameras being mandatory, civilian review boards, and most DSA candidates and many Democrats support this version and are still being asked about the phrase. So proponents argue that investing in social services can deter crime and decrease the need for policing, while critics fear that such reductions may lead to increased crime rates. While some cities responded to these calls with budget cuts, many others reversed or increased police funding in subsequent years, and that's where it goes back to what Chris had showed us here. And it doesn't look good because, yes, some places did increase crime. So this is what happened. Like he said, Texas, they cut 150 million in 2020. They reversed it in 2022, put that 150 million back. Minneapolis proposed replacing the police department. Voters rejected it in 2021, but the budget was ultimately increased beyond where it was in the first place. And that's where George Floyd was murdered. So they're kind of doing the same thing they've always been doing, unfortunately. Los Angeles County, 150 million was cut from LAPD, restored and increased by 2022. New York City shifted 1 billion from the NYPD but most were accounting changes, which is moving from school safety to education department, not the actual service reductions. And then Portland cut 15 million and disbanded gun violence reduction team. I mean, I don't know if that's smart. And that saw a significant violent crime increase. So the pattern of initial cuts, often modest, followed by rapid reversal as crime rose and public sentiment shifted. By 2023, most major cities were spending more on police than before 2020. So, from 2020 to 2021, there was a crime spike. Violent crime did increase sharply in 2020, with homicides rising roughly 30%, the largest single year increase on record, but the timeline complicates the narrative. I want you guys to understand, and they brought it up here, I'm about to say, COVID. COVID was a big proponent of people's crime rates increasing. Yeah, so the murder increase began in late May, June, literally when we started getting locked in the house. Contemporaries with protests, but also with COVID lockdowns, economic disruption, and social upheaval. Cities that did not cut police budgets saw similar crime increases to those that did. So even if they did not cut the police budget, they still saw a crime increase. Crime increased in rural areas and small towns that had no defunding movement at all. And other countries experienced similar crime spikes during COVID without any defund movement. Then there became a staffing crisis. What did change dramatically was police staffing. Departments nationwide faced recruitment collapse. Applications to police academies dropped 50% to 70% in many cities. Retention crisis. Officers retired early or transferred to suburban departments at unprecedented rates. Morale decline. Surveys showed that a record low morale and record high rates of officers discouraging their children from entering policing. This staffing crisis is arguably more significant than the budget changes because even cities that increased police budgets couldn't fill positions. Many departments are still operating at 15 to 25% below authorized strength as of 2024. So that's 2 years ago. So maybe it's increased by then, but if it took that long, it might still be kind of low. It might be, I wonder what it is. Can you look that up?
What specifically you need me to look up? I can get it right now.
Okay. With cities that cities with are okay. In 2026, are many police departments operating below authorized strength? All right. Disgrace. Let me reach out to. Let me see what Disgrace says. Disgrace says, while you look that up, let me talk to him. I think it boils down to the nature of the state. The U.S. in particular is an imperialist state, and thus utilities its policing not for the sake of order and justice, but to develop the imperialist interest of the state. I don't think probably there's much inherently bad with police, but under capitalism, crime is very extreme. And so how large the police force is will correlate. Combining both these notions, imperialist state interests plus overfunded police, leads to an abuse of authority. Oh my goodness. You're spitting right there. I can't front. I agree. So ultimately the problem is capitalism. If you understand what I'm understanding. Absolutely, I hear you on that. And we're not having the capitalism conversation today, but you're right to some degree, man. Like I think that this country has an inherent capitalistic imperialist DNA that I don't think is going to go anywhere anytime soon. So we're kind of stuck and trying to fight back and be the good guys, a canary in the coal mine that's trying to shed some light on the ugliness in this world and find a way out of it, find a way to a better tomorrow. And that's what this show is about, is to inform and educate so that we can all find a better pathway. Because this whole phrase, defund the police, was a movement that I think got co-opted to fearmonger the ability to reform the criminal justice system here in America. And I do think that a lot of it does come from for-profit prisons and all that stuff, which is like, which I want to get to in a second when we talk about it. But Chris, did you find that answer?
Yeah, I did. Actually, it says many police departments across the United States are operating significantly below normal or recommended staffing levels in 2026.
Okay.
Large metropolitan agencies face massive personnel deficits. New York City is short over 3,000 officers. Chicago is down more than 1,300. Los Angeles is short over 1,000. Philadelphia is missing roughly 1,200. The national average reports indicate that many departments operate at an average of roughly 10% below optimal or normal staffing levels. So why shortages persist, recruitment and retention crisis, fewer candidates are applying, and experienced officers are leaving due to burnout, early retirements, and high attrition. Um, Changing standards to attract applicants. Some departments have lowered college credit prerequisites and streamlines application red tape. And cultural shifts. Younger generations often prioritize work-life balance and career flexibility over traditional law enforcement tracks, compounding the hiring gap. So there are a few trends, but I do want to talk about the changing of the standards, right? Lowering college credit prerequisites or streamlined application red tape. I do feel like that is a major problem as to why there is a huge disconnect and disproportionate amount of um,
Uneducated
unprofessionalism.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, however you want to call them
No,
niggas, they do
unprofessional is
not
probably a
need
better
to
way to
be
say it. Unprofessional is probably a better way to say
man.
it. Yeah. But that's the problem. We sit here and we say, okay, there's a problem with police. We just gotta lower the bar to entry. That's not the way to do it, bro. That's not lower the barrier to entry. I don't think that's it. Um, but when we talk about the places that lowered their budgets, what worked was that the mental health response team they created, cities that added social workers to response. The mental health crisis saw a positive result. Violence interruption, community-based programs to mediate conflicts showed promise in several cities. Accountability measures, enhanced oversight and transparency, improved police community relations, um, and youth programs. Summer jobs and mentorship programs correlated with reduced youth violence. Excuse me. So what didn't work was eliminating specialized units, disbanding the gun violence team in Portland. I'm sorry, Portland. I don't agree with that either. Violence increased after that. So rapid implementation. Cities that made quick, dramatic changes struggled more than those that had gradual transition. So you want to do this gradually. A lack of alternatives, cutting police without ready replacement services created service gaps, obviously, and political sustainability. Policies without broad public support face quick reversals. All right. So you guys can find this on opencrime.usa. I'm sorry, opencrime.us, and it's under analysis and defund the police. You can get more information on this document that we're trying to, where it kind of explains to you the time between 2020 and George Floyd and defund police rise and its fall by 2024.
Well,
Uh,
George Floyd Justice and Police Act and reintroduced in 2026 is something that we do have to pay attention to because there is an availability for that to come back in place. But as you're in open crime right now, you see the racial disparity, and I see it in Q. It is ridiculous. But I do want people to understand this. There has been bipartisanship in these policies. You do have again Trump, who signed the First Step Act. We do have Governor Christie in New Jersey, who had bail reform passed in 2014 that took effect in 2017. So there, and with that being said, uh, New Jersey pretrial jail population dropped 44% within 2 years, right? So Illinois eliminated cash bail entirely, the first state to do so, right? Trump signed an executive order on cashless bail, right? So there are things that have moved in the right direction, but we do have this administration that will roll back things that they already signed off on, right?
Yeah.
So that is the thing that that's and to the base. If I voted for him and he said this the first time, and now that he's in and I'm just speaking on behalf of the red. If Republicans voted for Trump and he signed off on cashless bills, whatever the case may be, and again, you got Republicans that are rural Republicans who are often one issue voters who do not care about what he did. Now that he's rolling it back and saying something that is prevalent, they are against it, and then now it's more voices against for the repealing of things that are already in place. So I think that is something that we need to pay attention to as well. I think we need to drown out the voices of those who oppose and be like, no, 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 Trump, hold up what you already signed off of. Don't amend this bill. You know what I mean? I think that is what we need to hold feet to fire to on some of that is, again, on our side.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I want to get into before because I know we cooking right now. We kind of done a lot in a lot, but I want to talk about the history of American policing and what it was built to do. So let me see if I can grab a resource real quick on that. Already have it. All right. All right. Well, yeah, you're right. We have to hold people accountable for the positive changes that were being made that kind of do get rolled back as time goes along. And it's like we're trying to revert, we're kind of like, almost like we're kind of like going back to like the civil rights era almost. Hold on one second. It froze on me. It froze on me, guys. All right, give me one second. Come on. Yo, if I lose you, let me know. Go on video.
All right. I think what people, to where Chidi was leading us to, I think, as we have these examples of, like he said, Portland disbanding this gun violence reduction team was followed with significant rise of violent crime, and that is cited as the clearest casual example of direct cutting leading to direct public safety consequences, right? And I think when Chidi was talking about the history of policing and the inherited nature, that is why they try to hold this authoritarian uh, reign on us, because they will point to one incident where it was significant increase, or they will say this is why we have to, this is why we have to, this is why we have to uh, have police in place. You know what I'm saying? So I think right now it is very much. Oh, I'm back. Okay, respect. We here.
I'm sorry, guys. My shit froze. Are we
We
good? Are we
here.
live on everything? Are we good?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm on. We on Twitch and we are live on YouTube still.
Good shit. Good shit. All right. Okay. Let's look at the history of policing in America real quick. Oh shit. Oh yeah. Hold on. I haven't even added it to the video. I added it to video. Okay. Holy moly.
We supposed to see the girl or the dude?
Dude, now.
Okay. Because the girls, what we
I
see.
know.
Okay. I was just making sure I didn't know if you had the right video up or
No,
not. But
I'm
yeah.
trying. It's the same video, just
Oh, okay. Same video, just different spots in the video. Okay,
different
respect.
scene, different slide or frame. Do I need to remove this bitch? Okay, hold on. Not her being a bitch, but this source. I mean,
Yeah. Great cover up there, buddy.
I wasn't talking about her. I really was talking about. I call objects bitches sometimes. You know, that's what I be doing.
This bitch won't get out my frame.
Oh my god, bro. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna have to add a new source in this bitch. Oh
Man,
man.
that's technology telling you. I know you got a script, nigga, but we was cooking. We was cooking on this. Oh, we lost you. Oh, you back? Okay.
I've been here. I just gotta.
I know we had this max structure to go a certain way, but hey, ref, tell the girls in the back take their clothes off. They ain't wrestling tonight. We going extra 15.
Oh my god. All right, boom.
This nigga just put a nigga over her. He couldn't bother to move her out the way.
Jesus Christ. You hear
Did she
that?
come up? She came over. She said, "Nigga, you will not silence me.
Oh my lord, yeah.
I am a woman, and I'm not."
Oh my goodness. I'm hearing a double. Oh, maybe it's video. Mute her. Can you?
What's up, brother? What's up? What you do me? Give me the thumbs up.
Yeah, let me know if you can hear it on Twitch and YouTube, guys. If just Grace, if you hear it, give me a thumbs up if you can hear the video. If not, hit me with a thumbs down.
Do you see the thumbs down?
You said thumbs down? I don't.
Yeah. I got the biggest thumb down.
You can't hear it? Okay.
No, we can't hear it. I appreciate you, chat. Thank you, chat.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Appreciate you. Okay, got you posted out. Back to drinking. All right.
Oh, we got a double.
You got a double?
Yeah.
Double of what?
A double of everything.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. All right. All right.
All right, let me hold on.
Let
Say
me
that
add
one
the
more
audio
time.
source.
Hold on. Oh no, that's just my dumb ass. I didn't mute YouTube. My bad.
Oh my lord, bro. The audio is not fucking with me tonight. All right. Let me add a audio source into this.
Oh, because you had the oh no double there. Okay, respect. That was on me. That was me, gang. My bad. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey man.
All right, can you hear this?
Let's see if we can hear it.
Can't hear it still?
Hold on.
No, they can't hear it. I don't think they can hear it. Let me just. I don't think. Let me.
You know what's crazy? I heard it the first time when you had played it over. The when you had drug it over in the play. I don't know what happened after that, but I had heard it then. You said this was given a history of it. Do you want me to try to share my screen and you pull it up on me?
You know what? Try to. I'm gonna send you the link, and pull it up. Share your screen. Sometimes I know even with that the audio be violent, but you can try that.
Yeah, sometimes my
Um,
shit.
damn, y'all be tripping on me tonight.
You playing it?
The thing about this one is that the media source is not like moving with it. Like I'm trying to track it. Control audio via OBS. That's what I'm trying to do. Video, 8800. Cancel that.
Video.
You know what I'm gonna do? I think I got it. Let me go to properties.
You got it?
No, I think I can figure it out. I'm gonna remove this.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna re-add the link of the video in the source for the previous source I had because I already removed it. See if it popped back up. All right, I think we're good now. Let me know if y'all can hear this. If y'all hear, please stick with us.
Two thumbs down.
Thumbs down? Damn. Oh my god. All right, listen. Let me break it down for you.
Let me talk to
you. So, before we can have an honest conversation about policing should look like, you have to have an honest conversation about what it was built to do. And the documented history is in the public record. It's on the NAACP's website. And I was going to show you guys an NPR video on this, but it is in a peer-reviewed criminal justice scholarship. It is taught in universities, and it's not a conspiracy theory, guys. The origins of modern-day policing can be tracked back to the slave patrol. The earliest formal slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. So that over time, that has evolved and grown into what we find as a modern day police force. Tactics include use of excessive force to control and produce desired slave behavior. This was first formed in 1704 in South Carolina. Slave patrol lasted over 150 years, only technically ending with the abolition of slavery. The slave patrols served three main functions: to chase down, apprehend, and return the slaves to their owners, runaway slaves, obviously, to promote provide a form of organized terror to deter slaves from revolting, and to maintain a form of discipline for slave workers who were subject to summary justice outside of the law, which is hangings, murders, all types of stuff. After the passage of the 13th Amendment, there was no longer a need for slave patrols. The Southern lawmakers and Confederate politicians then enacted discriminatory black codes to control the newly freed population. recruiting ex-slave patrol members as police officers. This is all documented. By the 1900s, local municipalities began to establish police departments to enforce local laws, including Jim Crow laws. Local municipalities leaned on police to enforce and exert excessive brutality on African Americans who violated the Jim Crow law. Jim Crow laws continued through the end of the 1960s, as most of us know. Through the through line between 1704 and 1968 is only 264 years. Slave patrols enforcing plantation on discipline for 150 years. And then we have ex-slave patrol members becoming reconstructive ever police. So police enforcing Jim Crow laws for another century after that. And then in 1968, you have 50 years of Jim Crow began, and the same year the Civil Rights Act was fully implemented. The modern policing conversation then begins there. So the United States spent about approximately 123 billion on policing in 2020. That's more per capita than virtually any other developed country. And here's what the spending produces according to the FBI's own clearance data. Approximately 45% of violent crimes result in arrests. Less than 20% of property crimes result in arrests. More than half of all murders go unsolved. Most crimes are not solved regardless of how much money goes to the police departments. The clearance rate has not meaningfully improved in 2 decades, despite massive increases in police budgets. This is not an argument for abolition. We do not want to abolish the police. It's a documented fact that just throwing money at the problem with police or the policing of communities is not going to help communities become more safer. And it's documented about what the current level of spending is producing. If spending more was producing better outcomes, the data would show it. The data does not show that spending more money with policing gives better outcomes. So when you have the right wing, who are the law and order group in the world, say that this is about we're the law and order crew, and this is about providing safer communities, and we should put more money towards policing. It's almost like when we say let's put more money towards war. How we have the largest military in the world. Have we stopped all wars? As a matter of fact, it seems like we can't help ourselves from getting involved in wars. So when are we going to have the honest conversation of just forcefully approaching things from a place of more money thrown at the problem, rather than systemically finding ways to solve and reduce crime, so that more people, one, are alive and don't have to be killed by police. Two, people have more safer communities and have more trust with the police officers. And we're not also having mental health crisis being handled by police officers who are untrained to handle these circumstances. So that's the goal, if you really think about it, So I want to get into some models that worked, but before we get into that, Chris, what you gotta say for what I broke down on the history?
Well, it's very hard to argue the origin story of police, right? And policing, and then how it has now grown into what it was naturally intended to be.
Yeah.
It was to wrangle up those to bring back so they can involuntarily serve, right? That servitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's not, but slavery is such a hard word to use, but involuntary servitude is something that we can all say intellectually and identify that involuntarily means, hey, this is against my will, and servitude means, hey, I do what the fuck they tell me to do, right? So I do what they tell me to do without having a right to it. That's exactly what jail is. That's exactly what imprisonment is. That's exactly what slavery is, right? And then when you look at what those inmates now produce or work for or manufacture or whatever the case may be in those prisons for little to no money, it's unpaid labor essentially. Because $2, bro, I got stories for you, bro. I got stories for homies that's locked up right now, and a bag of gummy bears in your commissary is $4. They taking it back to the dorm and selling it to niggas for $9.
Mm.
And if niggas need that sugar rush or want that sugar rush, they going right down to that little kiosk that's in the dorm. They putting in their code and they transferring that motherfucker that $9 to get them gummy bears. And right now I can go to Family Dollar and get 5 packs of gummy bears for $5, nigga. I will make a killing in prison.
Yeah. With that being said, yeah, I guess you would. Listen, no, but you're right. Like this, I think when you talk about the involuntary servitude, and then the pipeline of prison, where they're being treated as almost as products themselves. The private prison model is to create more.
Yeah, the people are products. The
Yeah,
people are products. Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's an inherent issue when it comes down to the whole incentivized nature of policing in this country. We're incentivized to put people there because people make money off of bodies in prison, you know. But if we're
Private,
talking about
private. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
no, no, no,
sorry.
no, no. I want you to finish what you said before I move
Oh,
on.
I was just freestyling some alliteration here, and it might encourage me to write some. I
Drop them
haven't written
bars.
a little bit. Privatized prisons perpetuate the presentation that people are products. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Because when you make money off a body, we've already talked about this a little bit. How much a state gets from prisons, how much a prison makes. I think they damn near up to $300 a body right now, cuz $300 a body in prison. So if you
That's
just do the
crazy.
math, bro, and you got $100,000 prison, if you a minimum security prison, whatever prison, you holding up to 100,000, tens of thousands. It's just racket per day, per
Yeah.
day. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a killing,
it's
man, and we are the product of human beings who may have committed a crime or a product. I don't think that we should just I don't think the goal is to just recreate slavery, guys. So that's the thing, like and even if they are criminals, So that's what we got to also keep in mind here. Is this how we want this company to run? But we don't have to choose that way. There are models that people have found a way to reform police units, which is what I'm in favor of. Let's remove the name defund the police for now. Let's just talk about reforming police because defunding the police scares a lot of people. Let's talk about reform. Can we do that? Can we make it so that people are not killed innocently? That people are not, that the right people are taken into custody, and that people are not getting shot in their own homes for police getting called to domestic abuse or people with mental health being shot, issues. So let's see. Let's look into Camden, New Jersey. This is one of the most successful, as Chris mentioned earlier, examples of police reform. Can you? Oh shit! I can't hear this either. Can you? Give me a second. Give me a second. Oh my god, bro. Do I have to? Let me pull. Oh, wait, hold up.
Between a man wielding a knife.
Oh, here we go. I think I figured it out. I think the things were just muted.
Drop the knife! You're watching what could very likely have ended as a deadly confrontation between a man wielding a knife and police.
Thumbs up, thumbs
But
up.
these officers, trained only
Thank
to
you,
use deadly
thank you.
force as a last resort, followed the man for 5 blocks, eventually de-escalating a tense situation and finally taking the man into custody. No one was hurt as a result. It's part of a new philosophy that came to the police department in Camden, New Jersey in 2013. With the highest homicide rate in the U.S., Camden had the label of the country's most dangerous city. A police force plagued with corruption, the decision was made to disband the entire police force, giving control over to the county to rebuild it. The county hired 411 officers, up from 250. Now there are fewer squad cars. Officers patrol the streets on foot and strive to have positive interactions with residents.
The key for us is being in the community before crisis happens and meeting people on a human level.
The Camden Police Force put into place one of the most restrictive use of force policies in the country, with the idea that officers should think of themselves as
Quick
guardians
question.
of the
I'm
community.
sorry, Chidi. Quick
not
question.
No, go ahead.
Which letter in that nigga name was silent? Was it the S or the Z? How we say that nigga name?
Whose name?
That
Come on now.
what is that nigga? Is it Zach? Is it Zakeem or is it Zakeem? I don't know what the is it Zakeem.
Zakeem or Sakeem? Oh man. Did they say it?
Yeah, I got some names on here. No.
The key for us is being in the community before crisis happens and meeting people on a human level.
The Camden Police Force put into place one of the most restrictive
Okay, let me not do
policies in the
that.
country, with
My
the
bad.
idea
Go
that
ahead,
officers
brother.
should think of themselves
my
as
bad.
guardians of the
we
community,
back.
not warriors. Excessive force complaints against officers in Camden have dropped by 95% since 2014.
So that was something that was foremost in this transformation, that if city residents didn't feel like they could trust the police or that the police saw them as human, this would not work.
Last year, homicides were down by 42% along with the overall crime rate. It's reflective of a nationwide downturn in crime, but supporters of reform say it's also thanks to a new way of policing.
So there's one of the most, I think, positive examples of police reform. So what I want to do and how, like, we don't have to end the show, but like how I want to end the show is not right now, but I want to reframe this conversation into a more productive conversation that we can start to, instead of saying defund the police, are you in favor of defund the police? Can we say, are you in favor of community policing? These people are walking the street and they're patrolling like back in the day they used to do and getting in touch with the community. A guy with a knife at the beginning of the video walking down the street, clearly mental health issues, and they just walked with him. They've walked with him. And I'm like, yeah, not every situation is going to be that simple. But the guy didn't have to die. They were able to apprehend the guy and get him to calm down, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Like the value of human life when it comes to these, generalized stances or framing of conversations when they want to say, are you for defund the police, defund the police? No, okay, can we talk about how communities can police better? Can we even have the conversation? Because clearly in Camden, New Jersey, which is a place where I don't live too far from, and I wasn't aware of how they were policing there in this conversation, so until today. So, and why isn't this more of a conversation than all of this fear mongering when it comes to defund the police? I don't think it's very productive, when we can't have these honest displays of, hey, it's working somewhere. Can we start to use that method in other places where there have been, a lot of murders or whatever, maybe it's working.
I would like to, and again, like you say, we don't always. I'm pretty sure we have more, but we don't always have the ending that's necessary, right, to punctuate. I think that was a great way for us to show the reutilization of reallocating resources, right? They hired more officers. They hired more officers. They hired 411 officers. That was higher than, what was it, 230, 250, what around there. So they hired almost
But they disbanded the entire force first, then rehired them. That's a bold move, but it worked. I gotta hand it to Camden. I gotta. This is treating people like human beings, and thus dramatically decreased the crime rate. Let me tell you specific numbers when it comes to that. So, Camden's per capita homicide rate was 18 times the national average. In 2025, the city recorded 12 homicides the entire year. It had its first homicide-free summer in 50 years last year. And between 2024 and 2025, the total crime fell 10%. Now we have 67 homicides to 12, 18 times the national average homicide to a homicide-free summer in 50 years from since they implemented that way of community policing. The city that conservatives would say collapses into chaos if you did this, when it's rebuilt its police force from the ground up, produced the most dramatic crime reduction in the region over a decade. Violent crime in Camden fell 6% between 2024 and 2025. The city reached a 55-year low in total crime. Camden's model is not defunding per se, it's restructuring. And it's asking what police is for, removing the officers who were not doing it and rebuilding around community relationships and accountability. The receipt says it works, as you guys saw. So we couldn't even move over to Baltimore with Brandon Scott. Let me see if I can find a receipt on him. But he's doing some great work out there in Baltimore.
When you talk about a murder capital, and when you want to talk about record low in homicides and shootings and safety, boy, what that guy doing in Baltimore needs to be recognized and commended more than it has, because he is doing the Lord's work, allowing these people to live. Everybody has the right to live. What was it? What is it? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Like, everybody has that, should have that. But now, again, the sociological case that's made for this, that's why the arguments have to be made. That's why the nuance have to be applied, right? Because, like you said, the word defund, driven by radical disparities in police, by these radical disparities in policing, is not really a budget argument. So when we say defund, you know what I mean? It's not really the budget necessarily per se.
Yeah,
but
we need to. That's why I like reform. Let's. We need a whole new approach, to policing, because like you said, they added more police officers in Camden, but the approach was more sound. Let's be real. Let's talk about it. Like, essentially, they increased the budget, didn't they? If you're paying for more salaries, but
that's how that math worked to me.
Yeah, but the approach changed. Here's Brandon Scott and how Baltimore reached a record low murder rate, and this is NBC News. This came out 9 days ago. So let's give our props to Brandon Scott out here.
Repeated criticism from President Trump and from others over its high rate of crime, but now it's making headlines for the exact opposite. Baltimore had its lowest number of homicides through the first 6 months of the year.
Gotta unmute it.
With just 60.
I'm hearing, I'm seeing it. You don't hear it?
The same period last year, 88 the year before.
Okay, my bad. I gotta unmute it.
The first half of 2023. That's a decrease even outpaced the national decline from 2019 to 2026. Homicides dropped by 31% in major cities across the U.S., but in Baltimore, it fell by 68%. Joining us tonight, the man leading the city of Baltimore, Mayor Brandon Scott, who has been in office since 2021. Mayor Scott, thanks for joining Top Story. What do you think is working to drive these numbers down?
When I took office in 2020, we talked about we were going to look at violence in Baltimore in a different way. We were going to look at it as a public health all-in approach and not just solely putting on the back of our police officers. And when you look at it the way that we've been doing it, when you have our police officers through our group violence reduction strategy, focus on the small percentage of people, less than 2%, who are responsible for the overwhelming amount of violence in our city, going after those folks, but also offering people a chance to change their lives, you see this impact. When you have us going after illegal guns coming into our city, gun traffickers, gun stores, gun companies who have been going around our laws helping to fuel this violence. When you see those great cases that our police officers are making handed to our state's attorney, our U.S. attorney, and our attorney general here in Baltimore, you see that. When you see this historic investment that we've made into community violence intervention through Safe Streets, through We Are Us, all these community-based organizations who have been waiting to have the city invest in them because they are the people closest to the problem, so they're people closer to the solution. All of that together, coupled with our historic investment into young people in schools and wrecking parks and youth jobs, all of it, how Baltimore has done this.
So I want to give him his props. If I had a soundboard, I would hit the applause for him because he deserves all the flowers that he can get with what he's doing down there in Baltimore. I got family that's close by there, and you know, I want them to be safe and sound. But they used to have the highest crime rate, and now look what he's doing. If you have a person who's intentional, you come in there and change things. So he came into office in 2020, guys, promising a social investment. His strategy was social investment. He implemented a group violence reduction strategy combining real-time intelligence among city, state, and federal law enforcement with hospitals and social service groups to identify those at high risk and intervene before violence occurs. So you're using the federal law, the federal government, talking to the hospitals, talking to social service groups, garnering intel and information and tackling the problem of crime head on. I love it. The results are documented by the University of Pennsylvania and Johns Hopkins, not advocacy organizations, two of the most respected research universities in the country. Baltimore had a 23% reduction in homicides in 2024, following a nearly 20% drop in 2023. Now, non-fatal shootings were down 44%, and the city saw a 74% reduction in youth gun violence victims. 74% is massive in youth gun violence victims. That's incredible. These kids deserve a chance to live, man. Are you muting yourself?
I say he gave them little youngins something to do, bro.
For real.
He gave them something to do.
Gave them a job program, you know. That's what like they got top things to do.
Because people out there robbing because they need money, bro. People out there committing crimes because they're in dire need. They desperate. You know what I'm saying?
Crime is higher in impoverished places because they're fighting for survival. It's not like people just who have all the money in the world and have a full-time job and then they're like, let me just go out here and do something crazy. If we tackle the poverty issue while tackling the crime issue at the same time, it can make a better experience for the community. And I think that, always gets lost is that we also have to fund the schools, fund the job program for the youth. And it's a multi-pronged way that he's tackling this because so we see two different approaches where you go to Camden, community approach, defund, restructuring the entire thing. His approach is like intel, youth programs, finding the issues, where it's coming from, plugging the holes of people getting these guns into the community illegally, all types of approaches. I love that as well. So there's multiple ways to reform police or reduce crime. And it's just a matter of how you look at it. I think the goal is not to just defund something because we can all have our own interpretation on that. It's to actually prevent crime and to lower crime rates by a proactive strategy. So 74% youth gun violence reduced. That's not a political talking point. That is a documented result from John Hopkins study on a program that combines police with social services, community violence intervention, and economic investment. That is not what Brandon Scott built. That is what got him reelected. No, that is what Brandon Scott built, excuse me, and that is what got him reelected, excuse me. John Hopkins University Center for Gun Violence found Baltimore's Safe Streets program was associated with a sharp reduction in youth homicides. The group violence reduction strategy played a key role in Baltimore's historic reduction in homicides, according to a University of Pennsylvania Crime and Justice Police Lab. Incredible, Brandon Scott. I love it. Um, I love it, man. And this is what we need. We need more people to have a comprehensive approach to reforming police and how we tackle the crime. So let me see if I can find.
But I do also, as we commend what Brandon is doing, what Mandani is doing, what the city of Camden is doing, I do also want to echo a little bit of, I know the wording and the phrasing, but the sentiment may be the same. Defunding the police, reallocating, refinancing, whatever the case may be, comes from the situation that we as taxpaying citizens pay entirely with our tax dollars. We fund the police department.
Yeah.
Right. So, our local sales tax, our property tax, whenever we buy a good from the store, whenever we pay property tax on our home, a portion of that goes straight to the city's general fund that pays the municipal police. Right. So, as a property taxpayer and as a person that goes and spend a lot of money on local sales tax, whether I'm going to aforementioned, not supposed to go to Walmart, Family Dollar, gas, going to Culver's, going to Zaxby's, going to McDonald's, wherever I'm going, it's a local sales tax, wherever I'm at. That goes to a general pool of money that then pays the county sheriff and everything like that. So when we then are looking at the disbursement of funds, right, and 50 to 60% of that general fund that is now dispersed to the police department pays the actual personnel salary. So if we're paying for the salary of those who are not policing us in the manner that we see fit, either you defund or you fire. But something's going to have to make do, because I know the only thing that's not happening is y'all not lowering taxes. Y'all not, you know what I'm saying? Y'all not. So my money is going to forever be a budget distinction as to why that word kind of makes sense to some people.
I get you.
But again,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? But at the end
And
of the day,
I think it does. I think we should be looking at the budgets of these police departments and how we use it to lower crime. We should be looking at, and if it's necessary, if it's necessary for us to do that, because if there's like $1 billion that was extra that we need to put into like youth programs or education or social services, we need to also support these other programs within our city. Whereas I think throwing money in towards an organization that used to be slave catchers and with the mindset of almost slave catchers almost perpetuates a problem of crime.
Exactly. And again, it's disproportionate to, again, per capita state variations, but pulling up the numbers, there are certain cities, again, like Milwaukee, Memphis, Phoenix, historically they allocate 40% or more of their general funds to policing. But you have cities like Los Angeles or something like that that will allocate around about 23%. And what we're speaking of here is that the national average, right? The combined state and local spending averages is $352 per resident across the country is what is paid, right? That's per capita, but that's the average, because you have some states, or some like Kentucky, it's $186, but you got states like New York, California, where it's between $500 and $600 per resident. So, when we're breaking it down, not only do the budgets, Chidi, and I know we're pushing it to another place here, but I'll wrap it up by when that is then now combined, when private prisons are making 500 million and 650 million per quarter.
Yeah, quarter. That's
right,
crazy.
Bro. The national average per bed right now, day rate $307,000 per bed. So it's incentivized.
Incentivized. So almost, if you have that private prison in your county or district, we gotta fill this up. Like, this is an issue. That's why when Angie Nixon said, I don't want to abolish prisons, I want to abolish for-profit prisons. That is a extremely specific thing that needs to be extremely looked at as to what we are doing here in America as a society to dignify the human spirit, or dignify the human life, to the point where we can say, we can put a number on it if you're a criminal, and then allow some billionaire to make millions of dollars a year, or billions a quarter.
And we're not even talking about legit, real violent. We're not even talking about like violent crimes. We're talking about, you fuck around and get a bench warrant for having a suspended license and having a failure to appear. So the next time you get pulled over, you go into jail. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are things, again, not, and now that person is now held in the holding center. Then when he gets processed, once those fingerprints go, once you go into the county jail, once those oranges, whatever, get put on you, that clock starts. So they're not incentivized really to, when the bail bondsman pay that money, nigga, you still might have to wait 12 to 24 hours just because we gotta get a little extra more off you, before we let you out of here. You know what I mean? Like that.
And that's where we come with the whole quota thing, where that's even a problem, where you have these police officers now having to hit a quota for what? Pull over people for what? So we can find random people who are living their lives that may have something that they didn't think of, whether it was a suspended license or whatever, just to throw them in the pen for a little bit, and that just domino affects them down a life of where you can criminalize them and put them potentially in prison as well, and make a little extra buck for these private prisons. And we have to, I would abolish those. And listen, how much money do you need off of freaking prisoners' backs? There's certain things that should be publicly served. Prisons is one of those things, because that's not something that we should be making a living off of. I'm sorry. You have people, a whole bunch of people's lives in your hand, and they're now incentivized to make money by holding them hostage. It's not right.
It's absolutely like, and again, they are. You may look at the revenue and then the operating expense cost quarterly. Bro, they're still making net profit 5%, 4%, 6.5% quarterly. Like what? Like, I mean, if your annual operating expenses is 2-point-something billion. Then what the fuck is your net profit margin?
Well,
if your annual operating expense is
they're making
500
million, over 500 million a quarter, they're going over that, So like, so yeah. Yeah, so let's look into another man who you guys are very familiar with, I'm sure, on how he's reduced crime in the city. Mayor Mamdani here in New York.
The past 6 months, New York City has experienced the safest start to any year on record. The data reflects what New Yorkers are feeling on our subways, on our streets, and across the 5 boroughs. Our whole of government approach to public safety is working. Major crime is down nearly 6% citywide. Since January, we have seen the fewest murders, fewest shooting incidents, and fewest shooting victims in New York City's recorded history. That equates to 122 murders, a 24.7% drop from last year, and the lowest level ever recorded. 322 shooting incidents, 15 fewer than last year's record low, and 381 shooting victims, 4% less than last year. Over the past...
All right, so those are the stats on what he's done in 6 months here in New York. I'm sure there's a lot more to go with Mamdani, but I want to talk a little bit about his approach. So New York City recorded 688 shootings, as he mentioned, in 2025. The lowest number... the lowest number in the city's history. That shattered the previous set in 2018 with 66 fewer shootings than the benchmark year. Compared to 2024, shooting incidents fell by 24%. Now, Mayor Mamdani announced that major crime is down nearly 6% citywide. Since January 2026, New York has seen the fewest murders, fewest shooting incidents, fewest shooting victims recorded in history, huge safety zones, put officers around places where young people were most likely to become victims of crime. Major crime in those zones were down 54% during deployment hours, with robberies down 62%. Felony assault down nearly 39%, and shooting incidents and shooting victims down nearly 70%. Good Lord, it's a lot. This man, who was called a radical socialist throughout his entire mayoral campaign, the man who won a platform on rent freezes and affordable housing and progressive governance, under his administration, New York City is experiencing the safest periods in its recorded history for gun violence. In our opinion, that is the receipt, man. That's the answer to every media personality who asks whether a progressive could be trusted with public safety and whether a democratic socialist could be trusted with the mayorship of New York City. He's doing a phenomenal job, man. He's doing a phenomenal. Every week I see something new that he's done. I'm like, yo, how is this guy pulling this shit off? He just started up a whole basketball court for a kid. Kid just asked him. I'm not sure if it was like a month ago, and already they're getting like restoring a basketball court that was gone out of stock or wasn't updated in years. So he's able to just make things happen. People are hitting him up on IG saying, "Hey, Mamdani, there's a pothole here." By the time they come back from work, the pothole's already filled up. He also doing some infrastructure stuff with the bridges and highways. So it's just nonstop. He's starting a new grocery store for affordable groceries, that are not contaminated. So it's a lot that he's done over here in New York City, and I think the crime reduction is the biggest thing to me, because they are saying that if you bring in leftists who are like defund the police types, that they would have a crime-ridden city, where he's showing specifically, when we talk bringing it full circle from the DSA, and how they're trying to smear them with this defund the police stuff, saying that, if you let them in office, there's going to be more and more crime. It's going to be like the Wild West, or it's going to become like a crime-ridden city. And he's showing that a DSA member can really turn things around for the city tremendously.
And I think we do have to also acknowledge, as we continue to monitor, is there going to be a unionization of the Democratic Party, or is it going to be a direct branch off? Because we are currently seeing a lot of compromising situations happening within the Democratic Party and those who represent the DSA. You know what I'm saying? So I would like for us to really kind of see where this all is. Because again, as they are doing things, I need it to rub off on their counterparts, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of
exactly.
people might run away from what is actually working and how this actually is impacting and making change, right? So
Yeah, we need
that
a
is something
socialist in
that,
office to show that it's possible first. That it's not going to just make the world, just the end of the world if you have a socialist mayor. This is showing that socialist governance could be successful. Because before it's like, oh, it would never work, And mind you, it's not like we're turning the entire country to a socialist regime, but it's showing that socialist policies and approaches to things could make a better community. And I think hopefully, but people would have to then be honest about what they're seeing in New York City and honest about the happiness that people are experiencing with the mayor and how popular he is for them to then come to his side and work with him, and agree and try to see like, okay, how can we work together in the Democratic Party for more of this? But people have to first be honest with that. Hey, man, he's not the fucking devil. Like, what the hell is the issue? Like, it's working, And the people that he endorsed, let's see what they do because they're not the devil either.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people need to realize is that, again, bipartisanship can work if it's framed and said a certain type of way.
Yes.
People receive things better when it's heard, or I'm sorry, when it's available or presented to them as a different uh, uh, when it's their idea. I think let's just say that people like it when it's their idea. People
Yeah.
really love it when it's their idea. And if we, as the Democratic Party or Democratic Socialists, can navigate those waters to make it feel like it is their idea, I think we'll be in a great situation to where we'll be able to then get more of what it is that we want and what it is that we actually need out of these politicians.
Yeah.
Because again, it's all about the constituents.
I think what we learned tonight is that this is a more nuanced conversation when it comes to defund the police, and it requires a more specific approach to policing and an intentionality when it comes to governance. First you got to identify what the policing is for, like as they're doing in Baltimore. You got to remove functions that police are not equipped to handle, like mental health situations. Adding services that address the root conditions that produce crime, like they're doing in Baltimore, with removing the guns that are illegally getting into the city. And you got to hold police accountable to constitutional standards. That's not necessarily defunding. So I think the phrasing has been. I think that defunding phrase it should be retired, honestly, in my opinion. And this is because it's not really defunding that's working. It's a redesign of the policing system, and what you somewhat might call a reform. You know, so the evidence is that it works in Baltimore. It's worked in Camden, and it's working in New York City with historic crime numbers, being lower. And and but yeah, that's my take on it. You gotta have an honest conversation where we understand that it's not about defunding; it's about reforming and tackling crime from the root causes. And I think that when we go to these public stations, public media stations, it becomes a conversation about the buzzwords. So if I was Andy Nixon, if I'm Abdul Sayed, I appreciate that they're getting far away from that term because it's not what it meant in the first place. But let's just like Yahweh, defund police is not we don't want that anymore. But we're still going to work on crime, and let's get to a new way of framing that. Whether it is comprehensive criminal justice reform, whether it is mental health awareness, whether it is funding social services and youth programs, just say what you're going to do, rather than this buzzword that kind of tanked the BLM movement, in my opinion.
And honestly, when we're talking about the BLM movement, we also have to understand that we get it. It did not benefit anybody the way that it needed to. We lacked leadership in that aspect. And so there, we have to take accountability, because not only does Black Lives Matter, right? What matters is the in the manner that we do things. And I think that is something that we have to take accountability, because once we mess up,
100%.
right, it's hard to get that back. We had momentum, and we had a movement, Black Lives Matter movement. And once that movement is co-opted within, that outside ain't never going to try to hear from us again until we get our own shit together. So I think that's something that, if we do want to leave on something, let's organize, let's strategize, let's prioritize together, so we make sure that we can unionize against those that are against us, and we can go ahead and knock that shit down.
Absolutely, man. I feel you, man. And I hope that we provided some level of clarity on the defund the police conversation tonight, because that's what it's all about. It's about just informing ourselves. We're not the brightest tools in the shed all the time, but I learned something tonight. I hope y'all learned something tonight.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that we really decode defund the police, so that y'all understand it's not the worst thing in the world. It was co-opted and it's using as a smear right now, but the smear does not work if we actually get to the root causes of these things and express what we really want to do when it comes to crime. And don't let that be the label of what progressives and people on the left are going to be demonized for, because a lot of people on the left are doing great things, like Brandon Scott and Zohar Mamdani and the gentlemen out there in Camden, New Jersey, who are taking a different approach to policing. And that's what it matters. Can we do a better approach to policing? To the Fox News pundits, can we do a better approach to policing, rather than just demonizing a word defund? Like that has a connotation that scares people. It's not necessary to continue to beating the dead horse. Let's get to the real root of the problem and what we're trying to say, which I think people understand is what we're trying to do is make a better community for everybody. So, ready to get up out of here, bro?
The great way to end it, brother.
All right. With that being said, all is love. Everything is everything. Hope y'all learned something tonight. Please hit the like button, subscribe if y'all fuck with our content. I really appreciate the
thanks for everybody in the chat, man.
Thanks
we
for everybody in the chat.
it,
We really appreciate the love in the chat. And
hey, Disgrace
thumbs
Fuck,
up.
Appreciate you, my guy.
Yeah, Disgrace over there on Twitch. Appreciate you. Listen, all the love. Appreciate y'all. We're taking a brick by brick. We're building this thing, and we want to our goal is to just enlighten people.
Dot, appreciate you with the thumbs. Dot, appreciate you, man.
Dot, thank you. If you out there, thank you, man. Appreciate you. But we will be back here tomorrow. So guys, join us tomorrow. 9:30 Eastern. Hey, we can sometimes be a little bit late, so maybe 9:30 to 10 Eastern, depending on what's going on. We should be here. But yeah, man, we are Everything Is, the podcast that we talk about everything that matters, man. We are the Zeitgeist.
We are the culture, baby.
Keep loving your hearts and spirit, because the world needs more of that. And we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.